One of the ideas that I shared is the necessity that nowadays we separate the wheat from the shaft. This is very important. This is not a phenomenon what is happening right now with Yogi Bhajan. This is not a phenomenon that is only happening to our communities. It's happening in several communities around Indian teachers that came in the 20th century. You probably have heard about Osho, you probably have heard about Bikram, you probably have heard about Muktananda, Patavi Joyce, and all these guys from India have contributed greatly to actually our Western society. So we need to actually put this in context. There is a very, you can say, intoxicated concept of masculinity in India. And this concept is very much intoxicated in the relationship with power, money, and sex. This is very common to find in India. If you have been to India, you see that the concepts they have about sexuality, about power, about money, the way they deal with all this is really, let's say, particular for our humanity, despite if we frame it within a certain teaching that is about light consciousness, high values, and service. It's still, if you frame our humanity within this context, it's still the problem will come up until we face the shadow. We face the shadow of our human nature. We face the shadow of our emotional inefficiency, our emotional. We are like emotional infants, you know. We come to a context like this, we dress up, we learn techniques, we absorb wisdom, we elevate our consciousness, and all of a sudden, at some point, we are teachers, beautiful, charismatic, radiant, wise teachers. But then there's a part of us that remains like an emotional infant that needs attention, that needs gratification, that needs approval, that needs to be seen. And if that bit of us, that infant that is emotionally very immature, is not addressed, then that sooner or later grows into a shadow. There is this very high, I would say, pursuit for truth that the whole community is engaging. Everyone in the community is looking for what is really happening, and I'm a little bit hurt that sometimes people think that we knew somehow, that the trainers knew everything. You know, I didn't know Yogi Bhajan personally. My only connection with Yogi Bhajan was through letters and emails. He had that ability to know who I was and where I was at in my consciousness and able to guide me, even though I was not with him physically. And that's my experience. So I need to be true to my own experience. Now, at the same time, obviously, this thing about sexual abuse and the ways how women are treated is awful. Whoever does it, doesn't matter whether it's Yogi Bhajan or anyone. That's really a very dark side in this whole story. And what is happening in our community, which I consider that it's going through a sort of collective Shakti bad. When I read the book of Premkar, Pamela Dyson, I found this very interesting in many ways. First of all, it's a very beautiful book. Have you read that book? Is there anyone? It's a very beautiful book. She's a fantastic writer. Second, it shows something that is difficult to see, which is from inside. We get an impression of what Kundalini Yoga is all about, but we didn't see from inside, from the perspective of those who were very close to Yogi Bhajan. And now we get that very clear account of how things were inside. And that's very interesting also. But I also see something which I've always felt myself, which is the the contraction of the human process in order to perform or deliver independent of who you are. And so your human process is contracted to fit a certain model and somehow disconnect with their own emotions and their own process, which might not have been the one expected to be projected, but actually it's there. And when you avoid a certain aspect of yourself, then it becomes a shadow. And that shadow is grown so much so far that now it's hitting us very hardly because of this. But this is not actually something negative ultimately. On the contrary, I feel this is very positive because this is going to make us become more real, more authentic. Not so much based on the projection that it's been so important in our community of yogis, that we project a certain image, a certain kind of role. And I don't think that this anymore will actually work like that. I think that we gotta be real and integrate all our past and be real to ourselves and be real to what we really can do for each other and not just what we're supposed to do with each other somehow forcefully. Bremka in her book actually portrays how awesome Yogi Bhajan was, how he's present, how he's being, his charisma, his light, his sharpness, his psychic capacities that were 99% of the time, maybe less, I don't really know. This is just a random calculation. These psychic abilities and all that he had were used to actually help people to improve their lives. He was really amazing in many ways, exceptional in many ways, complete in many different dimensions. And so people got very attracted to him. People fell in love with him, whether he was a man or a woman. They fell in love with Yogi Bhajan. And that part of the story is very difficult to know if we haven't had a close contact with him. It's very Indian. He speaks very like an Indian and has a teaching method that is very Saturn-like. He himself said he was a Saturnian teacher. You know what that means? Saturn? Saturn is discipline, structure, correction, being very, very tied to rules. That's Saturn energy. This has created the image of Yogi Bhajan being very domineering, very authoritarian, sometimes even like a dictator, which is the Saturnian energy. And now we are in a different context. But what happens nowadays is that this generation, our generation, and future generations are not actually very connected to that Saturn energy anymore. Aquarian age is ruled by Uranus. Uranus and Saturn are conflicting with each other. If you know the astrology, you know that Saturn and Uranus are conflicting with each other. They are opposite energies. Saturn is rules, discipline, structure, go, obey, and do, as I say. That's Saturn. And you can see Yogi Bhajan, all videos, he speaks like Saturn energy. What is Uranus? Uranus is invention, rebelliousness, innovation, science, empirical knowledge, freedom, brotherhood, sisterhood. And so when you have a Saturnian energy into the Uranian energy of the Aquarian age, we will have difficulties. And so when the energy of Uranus kicks in, which is happening right now, what happens is that our nervous system increases its capacity, cognitive capacity, sensory capacity to perceive things in a higher resolution. Therefore, these are the times when we can see and experience truth in a much more direct and immediate way. Our nervous system is actually shifting. Our forefathers and foremothers that saw things black or white, literally. The TVs were black or white, right? Then years later they had colors. Nowadays they are 3D. And it's going to keep evolving. Do you think that the nervous system of a human being doesn't evolve? And so when I came here, I found a way to actually develop what I know is the potential of every man to be a service of the whole community of women and men, and also to be a support to heal our world. And now that this came up, it's like, okay, so the healing takes another level now. And we gotta understand that even though there's a lot of light in the teaching, we still have to heal a lot of the experiences that haven't been addressed in our particular path. Experiences of our emotions, experiences of our shadow, experiences of our need to compensate when life becomes hard. There's so many things that we don't entirely know. Nevertheless, what we know is that there is something, and it's painful, and it's going to affect our community. Now, this is one side of the story. Now, the other side of the story, in order to separate the wheat from the chaff, is that actually he brought something which is very powerful. And he brought something that has touched and changed the life of so many people. And so our future depends on how we can integrate and hold this contradiction. There's so many studies that show how Kundalini Yoga actually changed the constituents of the brain, and how it shifts the ability of our nervous system to increase the cognitive capacities, so you can have a higher resolution of life. Kundalini Yoga is not the same as Yogi Bhajan. It owes Yogi Bhajan a lot, but it's not the same. Kundalini Yoga is something else. Kundalini Yoga is the message. Yogi Bhajan is the messenger. They're different. You should come to the path because of yourself and because of what you are aiming at, which is your truth, your light, your consciousness, the healing process of your emotions, and so on and so forth. Come for that and achieve that. Don't come for a person, because when you come for a person, you will most likely get disappointed, which is what is happening nowadays. We're all humans. Yeah? Our teaching is being very teacher-centric. And the problem of being teacher-centric in our teaching is that it gives space for people to follow another person, a teacher, or then someone that wants to be followed, because it's so teacher-centric. Or it creates this problem of tribalism. So your input in the life of people will bring so much healing, connection, and sometimes a sense of meaning that they didn't have earlier, a purpose in their life, a path. That's what we should keep. That's what we should definitely embrace and embody in our own selves. Well, Kundalini Yoga also has amazing capacities to shift the energy. We don't have to follow Bikram. We don't have to follow Patavi Joyce. We don't have to follow Yogi Bhajan. The technology is amazing. There's scientific evidence to prove that. You don't have to become someone you are not. You are to become yourself. And now, given this particular crisis we're going through, this is going to have more and more space where your particular light can bring its value and its contribution to the system, and the system will absorb it. This is where we are moving. It's not anymore everything dictated from the top down, and we just follow. We're just followers. This is the age of Aquarius. We cannot follow. The so-called millennials, they don't follow. They research, they test, they criticize, and then they take their decisions. They don't follow. If you don't trust your own experience, then there we have a real problem. And if your own experience is being positive, if your own experience has helped you, understand that this is just the beginning of it. At this point, the experience of Kundalini Yoga has given you horizons to look into, that's giving you a balance that you can feel it within yourself. If that is the experience you have had, then trust that. And stick to that. And learn from your own experience. At the same time, I think this is partly also an excellent opportunity to become more connected and deeply committed to our process. You know, not to the process given by someone, but to your own process. And I think this is the opportunity we have now to really, really, really and profoundly commit to our process. Because if this happens and you go through this process and succeed, it means that you will become bulletproof.
Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo